Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar on new mobility. I am Pratik Devan, and I am representing WRI-India, and this webinar is also hosted with a few of my colleagues, Chaitanya and Sudeep. As many of you know, WRI-India is a non-profit that provides objective information and practical proposals to foster environmentally sound and socially equitable development. Our work focuses on building sustainable and livable cities and working towards a low carbon economy. Through research, analysis, and recommendations, WRI-India puts ideas into action to build transformative solutions to protect the earth, promote livelihoods, and enhance human beings. As one of our focus areas is cities and transport, our efforts currently is to understand the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on Indian cities and how we can support city authorities and our frontline workers through these tough times. Having said that, we know that the effect of COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown has globally, especially on business as usual operations in cities across the world, as well as in Indian cities. One of the major city operations that has been affected by this is the transportation and mobility sector, given the number of interactions and touch points that occur while commuting, as well as the ease of the spread of the disease due to close proximities. However, transport services are still needed, especially to help essential workers reach their office, to help citizens get to hospitals, and fulfill other emergency needs, and to ensure the delivery of groceries and the other essential services to neighborhood stores and the people's home. Through this webinar and with the panel, we will explore and hear first-hand perspectives from new mobility enterprises on how they're supporting essential mobility through the lockdown, with many of them pivoting their services to adapt to the growing need of safe commute and movement of goods, and their outlook for urban transportation as cities look ahead to a gradual transition out of the pandemic in a phased manner. With that, let me introduce our panelists for today, Mr. Arvind Sanka, co-founder Rapido, Mr. Cedric Nava Tandong, CEO, Three Wheels United, Mr. Vishwas Singh, Vice President, Shuttle, Mr. Rajat Rawat, Senior Lead Government and Corporate Relations, ULU, Ms. Chand Tulal Mazumdar, Public Policy, India and South Asia, Uber, and our moderator for the panel, Ms. Chaitanya Kanuri, Manager, Urban Transport, WRI-India. Over to you, Chaitanya.
Thanks so much, Pratik, for setting that context very clearly. Welcome, panelists. It's a pleasure to have you here, and the audience as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this. We have about an hour, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So the structure of the webinar is something like this. We'll go through a set of questions for discussion for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll open up for audience Q&A and engagement for 15 to 20 minutes post that. Does that sound all right? I'm assuming that is a yes. I will ask all the panelists to mute themselves when they are not speaking. At the moment, I'm just unmuting you, but it'd be good if you can mute yourselves. And please just be brief and to the point so that we can cover as much ground as possible. Having said that, I'm going to jump straight in now. Okay, so I wanted to start by understanding the situation before the lockdown started. So let's rewind a little bit. We had I think, significant number of cases of COVID starting in India in about the first week of March, end of that first week of March, and then the lockdown came into place by the 25th of March. So in that period, I wanted to understand whether you as mobility enterprises, what changes did you notice in your own services and in your operations during that period before the lockdown? And was there any impact at that time? Maybe we can start with Arvind.
Yeah, hi Chaitanya. I think before lockdown, from the first week of March, because we are present in multiple cities in the country, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. We have seen the impact started in terms of people giving work from home, or people stopped going to a lot of crowded areas, and we have seen there is a slight dip in tier 1 markets, especially, but tier 2 and tier 3 we haven't seen a lot of impact. Because one, the office commute as a use case, and number two, people going together for partying, etc. in tier 2, tier 3 is much lesser than in tier 1. So we didn't see a lot of dip. Hardly we have seen a 10% dip in tier 2, tier 3, even in the second week of March, compared to a tier 1 where we have seen around 20% dip. So we have seen, I mean, obviously we didn't expect this will come that fast in terms of lockdown, but we thought we might need to be ready ourselves if anything like this is going to come up. And one thing that we have seen, or we have started in the second, third week of March itself, is that we started focusing our energy on we not only do people transportation, we also do logistics. So we used to do food delivery. So we know if anything like this is going to happen, we thought we can focus a lot on essential deliveries. Maybe we can talk about that a bit later. But we have sensed this coming, and as I said, we didn't see that it's coming for sure. We thought the impact is less in those cities, but because the national-wise lockdown, yeah, I think by March third week, then we have to completely scale down the operation.
Okay, thank you. Vishwas, the office commute is also a significant part of Shuttle's use case. Can you tell us about the impact from Shuttle's perspective?
Yeah. So I think even before the lockdown came into place, we all were watching and observing closely what was happening around the world. And there were a lot of cues, in form of government directives, advisories that started flowing in. In fact, a lot of corporates even went ahead, of the advisory and started getting more conservative in terms of movement, in terms of people gathering together, the need of coming to office or moving. So we saw very, very direct impact on the demand that we were experiencing. We are basically a structured commute space. We are in that, and on a day-to-day basis, the variability is minimal. We see same demand coming every day because people mostly go to office almost every day, and whatever variability is there, few percentage not coming to office because of leaves and all, that's constant through the period. But what we started seeing is that one after another, some cities earlier, some cities a little later, the demand started kind of dropping significantly. And this was the time when we also started to respond to the situation by focusing on hygiene measures. So we started with sanitization of vehicles before and after each trip. So this is something that is logistically intensive, and it took us a few days to be able to ensure that required resources and required personnel are available to do this, and also making this messaging clear to the consumers that we are taking steps around hygiene. We noticed what was happening in public transport also, because we kind of emulate that to some extent. We observed that public transport buses were directed to operate at a later occupancy levels. So if they have a 50-seater or 60-seater capacity, they would be only allowing maybe 30%, 40% of the seats to be occupied. They will not issue any further tickets if that is filled. So we got some cues that maybe so this is, I'm talking about when the COVID lockdown was still not in place. But these are the cues that if things start opening up also, there would be a gradual movement towards it, and social distancing and hygiene measures would be a hangover for a very reasonable time, and all mobility modes will have to implement those. So
We'll get to that.
yeah, totally. So this was our
Thanks,
experience. It went totally for a shutdown. Yeah.
Thanks, Vishwas. Rajat, could you quickly chime in with how Yulu, what changes sort of Yulu experienced before the lockdown?
So yeah, so thank you for the question. So for Yulu, I will keep this discussion, specific question from 3rd of March to 25th of March when the lockdown was announced. So from the 3rd March when 3-4 cases started coming in India, and there was a panic around, specifically in the city like Bangalore, because first few cases come around from the city only. But till 13th or 14th March, we didn't saw any huge dip because of our nature of our transportation. Because Yulu as a solo mobility, people were still preferring Yulu rather than going into bus or train or in public transport. So till 15 to 16, we were not having any huge difference in the number of daily trips. But after there were indication of like few indication by the Prime Minister of India that there can be few strict measures, and the corporates also considering work from home, there was a significant dip, and then down the line in 2-3 days our business got completely shut. But prior to that, we started our hygiene part with the WHO recommended all the chemicals. We started sanitizing all our bikes. We were targeting the 4 times a day that we are sanitizing our bikes. We were directly communicating it to the city authorities. We were communicating it to our users. That was the most important part. And also like, because for our kind of business, for Yulu kind of business, there is a lot of field staff that are on field. So our field staff safety at that point of time was also of consideration, and with all the safety measures, we were looking at the whole approach. And what we planned in that phase was so that we knew that we have to pivot into the essential services, and we had a few earlier partnerships. I think that we will talk further as well. That we had few partnerships with the hyperlocal companies, grocery companies, and the food delivery companies. So for the next 1 month, our plan was to pivot into whole of that segment and to rent out the vehicles on a longer period rental services, and we called that project as Corona Warriors. So we have done a lot of things around Corona Warriors, and we have supported the Corona Warriors, be it a policeman, be it a doctor, be it a delivery boy, by within the scope of Yulu.
Thanks, Rajat. Chand, would you speak to Uber's impact, the impact on Uber, and maybe compare Uber Pool to Uber Regular, as well as Uber Global to Uber India, just because you are able to bring in that global perspective? No, you can, hold on, let me check. You're self-muted. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Right, it's working. Yeah, thanks, Chaitanya. It's really great to hear everyone's point of view. Yeah, you're right. See, in a way, what happened with us was because we are seeing this impact in other global markets earlier, and it started happening in India. Obviously, we knew that it was coming. So the preparedness internally kind of started in February. That we started, the internal team started keeping a lookout on how the demand and supply is panning out in different markets. Early March, I think similar to what Arvind said, early March, we saw the demand dipping. The demands were dipping from airports. A lot of companies had already given work from home mandates. However, what happened differently in India was other markets went on like maybe city-wise shutdowns, but in India, what we saw was a complete national shutdown, right? Which was a little different than what happened in other markets initially. Though, I mean, that happened in March, but what we decided when the trip started going out, or generally like looking at, we have an epidemiologist on consultation in San Francisco. We decided to have an infectious disease expert before taking like calls on how to react to the situation. we suspended Uber Pool almost a week or 1.5 weeks before the lockdown was announced by the government. It was not in relation to any demand. It was just our way of ensuring the social distancing message kind of goes out, and we may take steps to flatten the curve, as we say. So that was the very first thing we did ourselves. And within a week, the whole lockdown kind of came into play. So yes, we have been able to take cues from the global market, but things have kind of played out differently a little bit. So we will have to see how it goes. And obviously, since then, we did a lot of pivot. As with everyone, we kind of jumped in to offer essential services to the riders. And see, technology platforms do have the benefit, right? Like you can use tech to do geofence. Like you can actually lock the destinations where you can take a look at the abuses, if any, that are happening. So we work very closely with the government to make them educate, to basically tell them, and these other ways we can do it. We also, we don't have the Uber Eats platform now in India anymore, but we pivoted really fast to use our motor supply and also the car supply to do deliveries. And we've also partnered with NHA and AIIMs to provide healthcare, to provide transportation for healthcare workers, right? So a lot of things have happened.
We'll talk about post-lockdown. Was this pre-lockdown?
Right. This was, so the pre-lockdown, these were all the steps that we started kind of looking at. What are the things, as I said, like, because we've seen this in global markets, Uber Medics and all of these services had already started, like we had started doing it in France and all of it. So these were already the discussions that was happening before even the lockdown kind of came, basically. So we had some of that advantage, basically.
Great, thank you. And finally, Cedric, I held you till the end because you are the only one who has sort of a bunch of drivers who also do deliveries and commuter transport to begin with. Is that correct? And we wanted to understand your perspective.
You're very right, Chaitanya. Largely our drivers do passenger commute. So dropping people, whether it's from schools to market and things like that. Very on before the shutdown, they were already, so our relation with them is, well, one is building an ecosystem and making sure that they can own their asset, but that happens when they are repaying loans to us. And you start seeing the trend very clearly because we have to recover money from these drivers on almost daily or weekly basis. So we were already getting a sense that their business was not going so well because there were more and more people who were expressing that, but also falling behind on their payments. And so we then already started having thoughts on how do we make sure that they sustain their livelihood even if there is a national lockdown. So that's more around the thoughts where we had before the lockdown.
Okay. Thanks. So now let's just move into, then we had obviously the lockdown, and for a couple of days at least, all transport more or less came to a virtual halt. And then we did start noticing that some of you guys were starting to build up partnerships, which were maybe already in the works, but they started coming out, and services in the form of some essential mobility for people and for last mile supply chains started. So I do also realize that maybe there might be attendees that do not know some of your business models. So if you could just maybe talk about, while talking about what you were doing during the lockdown or what kind of essential services you were providing, could you also briefly state what your typical business model is? Let's start with Yulu on this, Rajat.
So business as usual is we are basically a micro mobility company, and I think there is a disturbance. Yeah. So we are basically a micro mobility company which primarily focuses on last and first mile commute of the user. So for us, the business is we do these micro mobility services with two type of form factor. One is human powered bicycle, we call it Yulu Move, and another is electric non-motorized electric vehicle, we call it Yulu Miracle. So, and in all the cities wherever we are present currently in 6 cities, namely Bangalore, Mumbai, Pune, Ahmedabad, Delhi, and Bhubaneswar, we have a direct partnership with the city authorities where they give us the designated location for the Yulu points. We call it Yulu zones. And then we create a whole ecosystem, a whole dense network of Yulu zones wherever the user can park the vehicle. So this is how the model works in a regular business day. If we talk about the post-lockdown period of time, how we pivoted. So basically, we had around 15,000 assets on road. Okay, so and 15,000 assets around these 5 cities, and that can be used. And these are basically for the solo mobility. So a thing that we did is we opened these services for the corona warriors. As I said, corona warriors, we mean the people who are still going to commute, like doctors or the delivery persons or the policemen. So we launched a new service on our Yulu app only. It's called Yulu Prive, where a user can come and can rent the bike for minimum for 15 days and maximum for 90 days, and we will charge accordingly. And another model that another service that we started is Yulu bike rental for the delivery persons specifically, and those packs were specifically designed for the delivery purpose, where we provided the support of charging infrastructure as well to those delivery partners. And the third service and the third channels how we supported for the essential services is that we aligned our manpower. We had around 300 people ka manpower on road, and we aligned them and we channelized them to these delivery companies, the essential companies, with our Yulu Miracle. So in that segment, we were directly supporting for the delivery of the essential services. So basically, these were the three important channels how we supported post lockdown.
Thanks. Was this distribution center to stores or stores to homes, the deliveries?
So these deliveries were both type of deliveries. It depends on what type of essential service we had partnered with. Some were milk run like services with the pharmaceuticals companies, like with the MedLife, Farm Easy, these kind of services. And if we talk about the companies like Big Basket, it was from the warehouse to the homes and everyone. So now the important thing for us was a thing for our fleet staff to understand that why they are pivoting into these kind of business. An important thing, they are not trained to do this stuff. They are trained to maintain the bikes. They are mechanics, they are operators. So now we are pivoting into delivery, and also in a very critical situation where the safety measures, precaution, how they talk to the customer, how they deliver the products are very essential. So we created a initial funnel and the initial interview setup for our field staff. We provided them a brief training before sending them to the essential services companies like Big Basket or Farm Easy or Grofers. So that was our process.
Thanks, Rajat. Arvind, on what Rapido has done since lockdown, as opposed to business as usual.
Sure. Our business as usual is a bike taxi. So if you want to commute anywhere from one place to other, you can order a Rapido, and a captain comes with 2 helmets. He'll offer you a helmet, and he will pick you anywhere and everywhere, and then drop you anywhere in the city. So typically that's how we work on a two-wheeler, on a business as usual. And we also used to be a third-party logistics for food delivery companies like Zomato and Swiggy. So we deliver. So in consumer, whoever is ordering from Swiggy or Zomato, sometimes maybe we might have delivered to you compared to their own delivery partners. So that is our business as usual. Obviously, post lockdown, one of the things is there are a lot of, people like you and me can work from home and still make money, but there are a lot of captains who are solely dependent on Rapido to make their ends meet, especially in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. Even though we are doing a lot of initiatives to make sure that financially we help something, or daily essentials we help something, but our main objective was how can we make sure they get some other job during this time. It can be not only what we are doing like food delivery, because food delivery also has taken a hit in terms of the overall restaurants being down, etc. But we went and we extended our food delivery to grocery. And so earlier, generally, typically to onboard any merchant like bigger clients to do integrations and everything used to take maybe a month or so easily. But within 2 weeks, you're able to onboard more than 20 clients, end-to-end integrations, or whichever city that our client needs. So like we partnered with Big Baskets, Spencer's, Big Bazaar, Super Daily for milk. And so it's anything and everything. We are helping government of Delhi to deliver milk to customers who are in our red zones. We are helping government of Karnataka and with the initiative of BBMP to deliver grocery or deliver medicine to the end customer. Because we have a huge a huge captain base on the ground, and they are looking for jobs, and they are ready to take the risk of working even though the environment is not safe, but they need to meet their own needs. So we have seen, so we tried our best. We not only did our logistics, we also made them available to some other jobs. Like there are some jobs in warehousing for someone. There are some jobs in the retail shop for someone. So we looked into every opportunity so that majority of our captains are taken care of. So post lockdown, we have definitely seen the online grocery being scaling very well. And not only in tier one, we are also launched in few tier two cities also in terms of grocery delivery. So that is a kind of a shift that happened from only transportation to 100% grocery or milk or any kind of delivery to make sure at least 10% of our captains or 20% of our captains on something during these times.
Thanks so much, Arvind. Cedric, would you chime in with what 3W Three Wheels United does and how you pivoted during this during the lockdown period? Yes, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, well, our experience is very similar to what Arvind shared. So post-lockdown, a lot of our drivers basically just went down to zero income. And yeah, primarily these are low-income, mostly population. So our interest was more of a social interest. How do we make sure that they earn a minimum amount of money to keep, well, to feed their family? And what we also then thought was we shouldn't be putting them too much at risk. So we went through our entire database, sort out people who had no underlying health conditions, people who were below 50 years. And these were the people we chose to send out because it was a voluntary call. They were to indicate if they're willing to do this. And then secondly, for us, we did it as a social measure. So a few of our investors and my co-founders put in part of their salaries to drive this initiative anyway. So what we were looking at doing was just compensating, providing a minimum wage to the driver on a daily basis, which could keep him afloat, and then that would enable us use that person's service to deliver groceries or medicine wherever it was required. So because that was already in talks, and because we had the commitment that we needed to go out and do this, it was a quick turnaround for us. We just reached out to the online grocery delivery players who wanted to deliver, and yeah, we positioned it to them as a social, I would say, program. They contributed whatever they were giving as a minimum income to those drivers and already, to other players already, and then we just topped up the rest. And through that, we had a few hundreds of people serving, largely in Bangalore, because we know the different areas and know where these drivers live in. But yeah, that was mostly what we did. Today, they're still delivering, and we continue to engage in a lot of other social efforts like this, just to make sure that the drivers, one, are fed, but also can take care of their family.
Okay, and like normally, Three Wheels United actually provides loans to drivers for
Yes.
getting electric auto rickshaws.
So that's our core
two-wheelers.
business. So our core business is, well, we're a fintech company. We build technology to manage loans. So we provide loans to drivers. Well, yeah, I just remembered I didn't talk about that part in the conversation. For our loans, I think the government came up with a scheme proposing that we give loan holidays. So we adopted that because, well, there's no point trying to get money out of anybody who's not making any money. So for our drivers, we gave them 3 months of loan holidays and then put in place all of this effort to make sure that they're earning. I think to our organization, what is important in these times is that we show ourselves as supportive as much as possible to our drivers, and then of course the economy, we would build our loan portfolios and the economy once all of this lockdown is over. But for now, I think the primary importance is making sure that people are fed and are safe.
Thanks, Cedric. And Chand, can you tell us about Uber Essential, Uber Medic? What were rolled out as service offers in India, and how are they sort of plugging essential mobility gaps?
Right. Chetan, do you want me to go over the regular services at all, or just like dig into?
No, I think the Uber were fine.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what we did was we really looked at 3 segments. One is how we can continue to provide essential services to our riders. So we launched Uber Essentials for that, where it will be a geo-fenced product. Riders can only book to a specific location and hospitals. So they were primarily hospitals because those were the ones that are kind of allowed. But then we also wanted to get rider confirmations. We had to put some safety checks also in place, right? We just didn't want anyone to abuse the product to do other things. So we took rider confirmation. We actually got top drivers with consent. The drivers were usually under 50 years of age because of the pre-existing and the health, the age risks. Those, and we provided protective equipments to everyone, not only for the driver partners, but also for the riders, so that everyone remains protected. And we also provided trip reports to the government, that so that they are aware that these are the kind of rides that are happening. That's essentials for riders to go to do their essential services. The second thing we did was the Uber Medics. That is for healthcare workers and government employees who are engaged in COVID-related services. So for those, we got into either partnerships with government departments, or we also looked at partnerships with NHA, National Health Agency, or AIMS, like private hospitals or public hospitals as well, depending on whoever kind of needs us. For example, the partnership with NHA panned like several cities, like they have hospitals which are in all of North India and like other places. So that what was a central account, but then the services will go live in several cities simultaneously. So that was the Uber Medics. It was primarily for the COVID warriors that we kind of call it. And the last one was Uber Delivery. So we do not have Eats platform, but since we wanted to provide but we know how to do last mile mobility, right? So we wanted to just use that logistics to provide last mile delivery. We did partnerships with Flipkart, Spencer's Retail, like all the big companies that We also partnered with MedLife to provide essential medicines. We also actually use this to partner with some government, again, to provide medicine. So these are the 3 ways we kind of categorized our services during the lockdown period.
Thanks. And Vishwas, from our conversation, I understood that Shuttle was trying to provide certain essential services, but you noted that it was more difficult for maybe a shuttle type of model to get permissions during this time. Could you reflect on that first by starting off by just stating what Shuttle does?
Sure. So, we are into office commute, and the way we operate is that we understand the commute pattern of people, their home and office locations, and their frequency of travel, and then we map this demand and translate it into stops, into slots, into schedules and routes. So basically, it's a repeat pattern that plays out almost every day, apart from few exceptions when people would be on leave. So it's like, office commute kind of, setup. and there are passes. You have to purchase a pass, and every day all that you have to confirm is that you want to travel today. You're not on leave. You're going to office, and you get a reserved seat in a AC bus, which takes you to office at a much in a much cost-effective manner. So that's the whole value proposition of shuttle for office commuters. And you know this COVID lockdown, and also bus being a mass transit kind of asset. The perception about buses are that there would be more people, and there would be proximity. In fact, this is the reason why the government and authorities uh, have not even thought about enabling any kind of bus mobility, at least in the private sector. In the government sector, there are buses which are operating at a very small scale with distancing measures, and also only for essential people or personnels. So what our learning has been in this in this lockdown is that there are few ways in which we could kind of help authorities and essentials. And we got requests from hospitals who were initially kind of using cabs, or they were kind of letting people use their personal vehicles, but with social distancing measures, they are open to using buses, and uh, they are kind of seeking our help in monitoring that service. And it is a kind of a blend of enterprise model where the hospital or the corporate is hiring the bus, versus a blend of consumer is directly paying for that service. So it's not that it is being paid by the corporate who is hiring. So it is basically the enablement of hiring that is being done by the corporate or a hospital or healthcare service provider, but the payments are being to be collected by individual, because these organizations have traditionally not provided transportation to their to their consumers, or to their employees, or to their staff. So with respect to this, we have been able to recently, that is a later development, that we have been able to get two opportunities with two key hospitals in Delhi, where we will be kind of helping them with their staff transportation. And this is something that is new to us. So we are still learning on how this plays out, and what would be the mode of government with respect to buses when we are closer to opening up the lockdown. So this is part one. While through the lockdown, we had the biggest challenge at our hand, I think, for every one of us, was that how do we ensure that livelihood of our driver partners is sustained. uh, to this, in this regard, we made contributions, we created internal fund. We also worked on skilling them towards delivery services, and connecting them with companies who are open to kind of hiring at this stage, even on a contractual or a short-term basis. Um, so that is the second thing that we did. Third thing was with respect to ensuring that if there is a healthcare need that is there, it should be covered. So we took a insurance, COVID insurance, that covers for their health issues in these trying times. The intent was that if at all we resume things, or they go out in search of livelihood, uh, to the opportunities that we connect them with, the risk would be there. And to cover that, we took for health insurance. So right now what we are looking at is that even opportunities of converting a bus, which is basically a bigger vehicle, into movement of goods, like making converting a bus to be a vegetable shop, and filling all the stuff and parking it in a society's premises, where people can with due social distancing, one after the another, they can come and take a stuff. Or it can be pre-ordered, packaged, and can be used as delivery. On this, we are working with authorities on permission because bus is typically for passenger mobility. It is not for goods mobility. But in these times, we believe that exceptional approval can be made available because some of the government authorities have already tried this out. For example, in Gurugram, there is a city bus service, Gurugaman, and they have converted their city bus service into uh, grocery and food delivery. So these are later developments for a bigger asset class like buses for us. Uh, so we are still kind of seeing how it plays out.
Thanks, Vishwas. My next question is actually sort of, you guys already answered some of the precautions you were taking to protect your customers and driver partners. So I'm going to skip over that. But my next question was then to try and understand how you see the impact of this lockdown period and whatever sort of alternative service offers you've developed during this time. Do you see them becoming a longer term fixture in your business model? And do you see any new avenues opening up? Do you see changes in how your enterprise conducts business? And I think I will actually start back with you again, Vishwas, because it segues well with your previous answer.
Thanks, Chaitanya. So yes, I think uh, social distancing and hygiene is going to be there for very reasonable time, and we feel that being a bus, a bigger asset, it is possible to do that. You can follow any level of distancing to the extent that probably 10% of people in the vehicle, but then the cost goes substantially higher. So with this in the at the back of our mind, we started realizing that so far we did not have that capability to implement this distancing in our I would say engineering framework, but we have built that capability now, which means that we have implemented seat numbering. So earlier a person would sit anywhere, but now there is a specific seat which is operationally also numbered, and in the system also there is a reflection of it is numbered, and you not only get a pass to enter the vehicle, but you also get a specific seat on which you have to be seated. And in the map, like in flights, you can see actually which one is your seat, and then we can enforce that proximal seats would not be booked, or maybe there could be two seats, or maybe even a row to be left empty, depending on what kind of guidelines are prevailing, or what kind of level of distancing the client or the consumers are looking at. So we have built this capability in this time, and we would want to see how it kind of works out when when the lockdown opens up in the coming week probably, and the measures that government suggests. Beyond that, I think on the hygiene side, everyone would have a different way of going about sanitizing their asset, their uh, you know uh, touch points which are high contact points. I think we have also prepared our method of doing it, but I think it would be great if government or even mobility players come together and create a knowledge base or some kind of standard around it, because transportation will always have some touch points, physical touch points, and if that gets kind of backing from the government or agency which can kind of uh, implement it, I think that is one area that we are still not very sure of, that if those standards would be good enough or would gain the confidence of the consumers. Uh, Otherwise, on the social distancing measures, we have made this preparation of implementing seat numbering.
Thanks, Vishwas. Cedric, do you see the service offers or the partnerships that you've built during this period as something that will continue post-COVID for your driver customers and partners?
Yes, definitely. I think, well, the market is changing. We think, just like Vishwas mentioned, we don't see things returning back to normal as we know it within 6 months to a year, which means when there is going to be a lot of personal transportation, or at least small, uh, well, everything which doesn't bring too many people together. So in terms of strategy, one, we are pushing more, and we were looking at financing three-wheelers and then light four-wheelers, but then we're going to do more of three-wheelers and light two-wheelers because it allows for safe spaces, all electric. But something we're also saying is we understand that the delivery, people working from home would result to a lot of delivery at home. So then we're looking at financing electric delivery vans. And this would just go further to push on the partnerships we've created now. We're already having those conversations to deploy capital as soon as the lockdown is over. So that's how I see the changes. But otherwise, yes, we're going to go through informing our drivers to maintain, to make sure that the vehicles are sanitized, make sure that they're wearing gloves, make sure that they have hand sanitizers in their vehicles and stuff like that.
And on the customer front, would because public transport and other enterprise providers also would be able to maybe sort of enforce customers also, which means passengers wearing protective personal equipment. But I'm wondering, would that be possible for TWU drivers?
The intention, so as it stands now, what we're doing is that we have already placed an order, a large order for masks and hand sanitizers that we are going to distribute with the drivers, with the intention here that they provide that to their customers when they get in. But I guess it would be a societal understanding between the end user and the driver at the end of the day, and we just have to hope that everybody is socially responsible enough.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Rajat, again, same question. How do you see some of the partnerships you've built and all lasting, and your business model? Is it? Do you see a pivot happening post lockdown, post COVID?
So if we see for the post lockdown or for any time period, if we see the business of Yulu, where we are providing point to point mobility and specifically last and first mile connectivity. So our primary point and our most important points are public transport point, be it the metro stations, be it the railway stations, be it the major bus stop. Okay, so now the whole touch points, the whole the corridors where the users used to commute will change. Obviously, people will commute post lockdown. One plus point for businesses like us is that we are solo mobility company. There are there would be no connection, or there will be no intervention with any human. We are regularly sanitizing the vehicles. We now have the technology in place where we would be regularly communicating this fact with the user. Every bike that the user wants to open via the Yulu app, it would be shown that last time, how many hours back or how many minutes back it was sanitized. So the user would be having a choice, and user would be having that confidence that, yeah, I am safe. But important thing is that if we talk about the previous partnership, be it with the metro or be it with the bus stops or be it with the tech parks or be it with the malls, obviously there would be a lot of behavioral changes from the people side. People that the commute pattern will be changed. Mostly it would be the work to home or home to work commute. So the thing is, we can easily pivot. And if we talk about specifically the things that we were doing in this lockdown period and what we can take forward, is surely a model that we introduced, Yulu Prive, where a user can own a personal vehicle, a sanitized vehicle, which we will deliver to his or her doorstep, and we will also provide them a personal charger so they can use the vehicle as their own. So that model we will be taking forward.
Thanks, Rajat. Arvind, what does the future hold for Rapido? Do you see your B2B versus B2C percentages changing? Do you see some of your new services lasting?
Yeah, I think first I'll talk about the opportunities for us, and then talk about a little bit on safety measures that we are taking. So I will definitely say there are 2-3 new opportunities that have opened up for us, which were always in our pipeline, but we never prioritized. For example, last week we have launched a product called Send Package. Say if you want to, if you cook something and you want to send it to your friend, then you can use our captains to deliver anything within the city. Right now we are doing only for essentials. So if you want to send any medicines, if you want to send any grocery which you have, and your friend is in need of those groceries, you can send it from your home. Or if you cook something you want to send from your home, your friend, you can also do that. So right now we are doing it only for essential need of courier services within city, but we are going to post lockdown, maybe we will extend to anything and everything, electronics or anything that people want. So that is one thing for sure, which we will post lockdown that will scale even further. And number two, our grocery. So earlier, grocery was not the segment that we were focusing on, but because right now the demand is also going to grow, and we partnered already with the largest aggregators already possible, like Big Bazaar, Big Basket, Spencer's, etc. So that demand is only going to increase. I mean, from the last 3 weeks, we already doubled our grocery orders last week compared to the first week that we have done. So I think earlier we used to say that logistics will be our 15% to 20% of our business, but it might change our thinking to go beyond that and then look at more than 20% to 25% being in the on-demand logistics. Good thing is there are hardly any players who is serving on-demand grocery as a third party. So we can work with every aggregator who wants to do the grocery ordering, and then we can power them with our logistics. So definitely these are the two new opportunities which has emerged, and we think that is going to help us in our long-term revenue. The other thing, according to us, the way that we are seeing our commute market post-lockdown, one of the major commutes that are going to impact is the airport or discretionary travel, and which is not the major travel for our users. People don't go to airport a lot with us. People don't go to business meetings a lot with us. It's a daily essential commute is what people use us. And if we take care of our customers and captains with basic hygiene measures, like having mask mandatory, having sanitizer with our captains, and making sure that we are communicating to the customers and captains based on safety. And if we are very stringent on the measures that we are taking, I think the possibility or I think things work right now on probability basis. I mean, you can ensure 99% they are safe. At least that's the confidence that we want to give to the customers with the platform that we have by ensuring. Good thing is because captain is also aware that he need to be safe himself and also from the customer. So we are ensuring that he takes care of his own safety, and with the customers we are going to. So there is a lot of mandatory basic hygiene measure that we are going to take, which will ensure on the safety side. But on the opportunity side, definitely there are a lot of new things that have opened up, and it will still continue, and it will be a long-term initiatives than a short-term initiatives for us.
Great. Chand, if you could close us out on the outlook for Uber. I mean, I can't imagine what would have an impact on Uber, but it would be great to hear your perspectives.
No, I mean, there has been a major impact, obviously, because some of the use cases that we have, right, like it is commute, it's kind of similar to what Vishwas talked about. It's airport travel. So till like intercity, interstate and domestic kind of travel opens up, a major chunk of our demand that comes from airport and all continues to suffer. So in the period that we look at partial or like graded lockdown, I mean, honestly, we see just like an expanded essentials continuing, like the more basically blacklisting of the containment zones, but then providing the riders an option to go to their work. See, another thing is like if you think about like if the government is opening up sectors, they also need to open up transportation, right? Like if you open up shops and then you don't have a way to get there, that I mean, those are sometimes not going hand in hand. For example, if you look at the MHA guidelines, and they have like clubbed everyone together, like taxis, autos, cab aggregators, where Ideally, that should not be. These are hailables. I mean, you don't know how to control them. Maybe maybe we can work together, like as companies, how to help the government and generally people to use the platform benefits for more riders, for more users, for more driver partners. So I mean, what I will say is we will obviously continue to see how we can go back to our business as usual, but social distancing is here to stay. We don't know how things will pan out, honestly, on that Uber pool. Like people, I was on a call earlier today and people are asking about Uber pool. There are very interesting ideas that are going around, is like if you download that Arogya Setu app and if it shows that you are a low risk, can you then like travel together? Like stuff like those will like obviously have to look into it. So we'll look into more of the tech solutions and how we can, basically use the platform to provide more and more different kind of use cases, basically.
Thanks. Maybe a last question, looking at the time. If you could all provide maybe short perspectives on this. I'll start with you again, Chand. Just in terms of how do you guys think this will fundamentally change the transport sector in some way? The lockdown that has happened, the post-transition period that is going to be occurring. And in such a case, should we be doing more to deploy technology and innovation solutions? I'm talking about everything from sort of integrated mobility planning and mobility information being available to passengers on a more comprehensive basis. Have you been thinking about how technology should be better used right now to help us pass through this and to make a more resilient transport system in the future as well? Chand.
Yeah, absolutely, Chet. Yeah, like I mean, just give you an example. We were already thinking on those, right? We have a vertical where we look at future of mobility and new mobility. In October last year, Dara was here. We launched Transit, where basically we were providing journey planning on our app. Like if you take a metro, you can basically plan using an Uber, a metro, how you can go from your home to work. So like that is our first step in basically the part of the platform, right? Journey planning, where you can go from home to anywhere and you know all the modes that are on the way. We have a partnership with Yulu, for in fact, like the Yulu bikes are available on our platform for riders to be using it for last mile delivery. So we are all for working together, fostering and growing the ecosystem, obviously. So as I said, like right before you asked, like I feel that generally for the government, also for everyone to just club these mobility companies with the traditional companies doesn't really work. So in a way, it is really on us and also on the general like third parties and association ecosystem to basically also tell the government that how can you do these differentials, like who could really come up with such fast services? Like, I mean, all these companies really could turn around during this 1 month and started the services because we obviously have the leverage of the technology already in place, right? Like Shuttle came up with this, and Arvind, like they all came up with these products within a month. So when we think to, like we can just like put our heads together, obviously a lot more can be done, and it will obviously be way more resilient. See, social distancing is good in a country like us, in a way where people are constantly crowding, like overcrowded buses, overcrowded trains. It will actually hopefully provide for a more comfortable and more affordable and economical ways of traveling. And if it just can happen if you look at how the technology and all the innovation can kind of come together. For buses, like if you put buses tomorrow, how do you know if there are 20 people or 50 people on the bus, right? Unless like some optional, and the shuttle kind of tells the government that, we can only 20 people can get on the bus and not more. Right? These are the ways, I mean, otherwise, I mean, definitely, I mean, I'm a strong believer in that only technology and these platforms can actually work to have a most resilient transportation.
Thanks, Jan. Vishwas, you may have some perspectives on how mass transit and sort of bus-based transit could be made safer using technology, considering that shuttle does work at that intersection.
Totally. So I think very much I would kind of borrow from Chan said, is that through technology it is possible to kind of plan journeys. It is possible to so for example, Arogya Setu app, yes, it is a self declaration kind of app for now, but if there is a person who is actually infected, they will have to update that information on the app. Uh, so I think in making that information available would make it very, very feasible for transport options to provide adequate measures to transport that person. So someone who is has symptoms or is asymptomatic but has concerns can travel differently, and who will identify that there is a difference between two passengers. It is the technology only, and the integration of the data and sharing of data under the right kind of protocols. uh, I think we all the modes are relevant, either it is two-wheeler or four-wheeler or larger mass transit options like us. I think all the modes are relevant today, will continue to be relevant in the future as well. Maybe there could be a shorter blip in the time, but then over time, all would continue to be as relevant as they were earlier. What would be required is that the technology gets used and leveraged to identify who needs what kind of mode, or who should be allowed what kind of mode to be to avail that. I think that is more important because we know that we all cater to different segments, and this is a price segment, and the country is not going to change when the lockdown opens. The segments will continue to exist, and we'll have to cater to all the segments. So that is our fundamental belief that we'll have to figure out ways to understand, and the way we are talking about today, the geographical red zones, orange zones, and green zones. There would be maybe these zones will shrink to people level, and people who are more vulnerable, uh, like elderlies and so on, or having underlying conditions. I think all those identification can help make a certain option available or unavailable to people. So that's how I see that integration happening.
Thanks, Vishwas. And just the fact that all of you essentially have sort of cashless modes of transaction, and these are definitely easy technology leaps that could be made across the entirety of the transport network. It's entirely feasible, and this might be the push. Arvind, what sort of changes do you see happening in transport across cities? Do you see them as a long-lasting impact?
Yeah, before talking that, I think I agree when we are talking about if you want to impose certain kind of rules, if it is an open kind of environment where the technology is not getting used, I think you can't impose a lot of things. For example, if there is an area A which is a red zone and you don't want anyone to go inside and anyone to come out, if you just open it and if you're just putting a physical policeman and making sure that no one comes out and no one comes in, ideally it's not 100% possible out there. But if you ensure that all the mobility players should ensure that no one will go there and no one will come out, I think we can make sure that it happens. Right? I think these kind of any kind of extra measure that we want to take, it's very very easy for any one of us to implement than making it an open. Or if you ask people to just follow those, not everyone follows those things. I think that is one thing where I see a why an integrated approach where on an uniform thing that given to all the mobility companies. If we want to impose some certain kind of rules, we can implement it in a lot of better way. And I see the fear of safety or the fear of corona will continue at least for the next 6 to 8 months or even a year. So definitely there is going to be a new normal, as everyone said, in terms of people expectations on each and every platform. So if like platforms like marketplaces like us, I think what we can ensure is if any of the driver, say a driver partner, say if he's not coming with a mask and ensuring that he will not even drive the vehicle, which is something that we can impose by taking the information either from himself or taking from the passenger who traveled before with the customer. So these kind of things can only be done by marketplaces like us, where we have a two-way communication between from the customers giving feedback on the captains, or it can be the other way also. So I think there are things going, the expectations for customers are going to change, and we have to adapt to it, and it's going to come with an extra cost. So we have to incur that, or we have to make sure we take care of that in our P&L. But things are going to change, and especially for us, I see because of whatever is happening on the economy side, people losing jobs, people salary cuts happening, and people feeling maybe a public transportation might not be 100% safer. So maybe they will look at alternative options. So if there is an demand that is going to come, we need to make sure that they are safer on our platform. So the only thing that we are working on is like irrespective of whether the government is going to impose any new safety norms, how can you make sure the stakeholders like customers and captains who are coming to you are safer even post this COVID for next 5-6 months later also. So that is how I see where we have to adapt to it, where an integrated approach is going to help a lot for the safety of our consumers.
Thanks, Arvind. Rajat, anything you have to add to the points already made on the potential for technology? And also additionally, any thinking that you do or yourself might have around how mobility trends might change around the city?
So for sure, the behavior and the mobility pattern in the cities, in the major cities, will change. And one thing all the mobilities companies have always talked about, and the likes like WRI, we have always discussed the need of institutional framework of data sharing. So I think this is the right time to implement that thought of an institutional framework of data sharing by all the companies and with the government, and how we can help each other and the government, and how in turn we can make intelligent decisions for our consumers. So one thing is that for all. Another thing is that, like rightly Arvind said, that these kind of technology innovations only the companies with the and the companies with the technology can do. Like how we swiftly pivoted to the essential services because we had the network, we had the technology, we had everything in place. So going forward as well, like I mentioned, one of the things that we are doing is showing the time of sanitization of the bike to the user and making the transparency so that there would be trust of the user to the mobility services. So that is very, very important. Another thing is that at this point of time, if we talk about the behavioral and the psychological level, people are listening to government and people are looking forward to government, that what they are saying. So what we can do collectively is making our points to government so that government can communicate those points to the citizens. Because after the lockdown, let's say for 3rd May, people would be looking, citizens would be looking to government that how do we transport, how do we commute. And like Chand rightly said, that even if you open the shops, even if you open few of the things, how will people commute, and who will segregate that what is the level of safety for what kind of commute option. Like right now in the Ministry of Home Affairs order, everything is clubbed in one line. So importantly, you can't club every mode of commute in one line. One important thing is that the government need to understand, and that thing rightly has to be communicated to the citizens as well. So that is what has to be done. And yeah.
Thanks, Rajat. Cedric, closing out with you on this question. So technology and sort of an app-based solution for the auto rickshaw drivers has been something that TWU has been working on and has been in the works. What was the adoption like before among auto drivers and their customers? And do you see that changing? Like these are really sticky behaviors, like among auto drivers as well and customers to want to directly hail an auto. And while that was changing slowly with maybe the bigger players like Uber and Ola, I'm wondering what that was like in the smaller, not so enterprise affiliated auto drivers and their customers. And do you see that changing?
Yeah, like everybody's mentioned on the call, we do expect changes in behavior. Part of this change would also be the number of drivers choosing to take up driving as a livelihood. And that is largely what we think is going to happen in our space. So because, well, with the virus comes a whole different economy, people working in shops, people working in delivery, people doing all sorts of other things. And the fear that customers would not use these modes of transport, at least not for the new drivers, would not incite them to buy a vehicle and go into this. So I think from our end, what we're looking at is how do we make a value proposition more interesting to the driver, even post the virus, and as soon as people start going down, as people start going out. So we're working already having conversations with our partners. How do we create a more attractive product for these drivers? How do we communicate to make sure that they understand that their livelihood will still be taken care of, even if there are changes. But yes, we do expect changes over, I'd say, both from user perspective and from the driver perspective as well. But then that said, so I think auto rickshaw drivers is one mode of transport which sort of sits in the middle. It's not too crowded, it's not too uncrowded. You still have to take about 2 or 3 people. So I still think it would and always remain a relevant part of the Indian transportation. So we just have to soldier it on as we go through it.
And just one question on from the paratransit point of view, we know that a lot of sort of independent auto rickshaw drivers that maybe rent their vehicle on a daily basis and all are a little more indebted, and they might have faced a lot of hardship during this time. So do you think that the drivers affiliated with TWU, by dint of it being an ownership model, as well as by the fact that you guys did enable some partnerships, that they fared better? I mean, I'm guessing the answer is a yes, but trying to understand how qualitatively they.
The answer for our drivers is a yes, largely because we got a job for everybody who was running. But then even that said, we didn't collect loans from them. So they just earned that money and may have or not have saved that money. The result, and it's not just Three Wheels United, every major financier is going to restructure loans that have been issued. What you're going to see is either longer tenures of loans or increased EMIs. And without the economy picking up immediately after the 3rd of May, it's not evident that everybody is going to have the same capacity to repay. So there is definitely some downward trend there before things go back to normal in the finance world. But that said, we're more worried about, well, I think transportation remains a key. Nothing is going to work without transportation. So I still believe that it's going to be, people are going to be financing it, and people are going to be using different modes of transport. The worry is more how many more people would want to drive. There is already a shortage of drivers. The question is now how many more people would want to drive than take another professional.
Thank you. There are a few questions. I have selected 2 questions as sort of something that I can address to the whole panel. So one is, do you see changes from people's preferences for moving from shared mobility to personal mobility? And the other question is sustainability. What is the sort of aspect of sustainability in the transport sector, in your businesses, in the government outlook? Is it going to continue to be a priority? Is it going to be affected for a short period of time? I'd like everyone to answer in 1 minute if possible, and pick the question you'd like. Anyone can start.
Yeah, I'll talk from how we see people moving from shared mobility to personal mobility. I think it's going to take more time because it's not that people have a lot of money where they can go and buy new vehicles at this point of time. And it's in 2 ways. One, getting loans from the bank. I think banks are also going to be even more stringent, seeing how economy or how the bad debts are happening. So I think because of lack of loans and because lack of having money, I see even though people want to move to personal mobility, I think it's not going to happen very soon. It's going to take a lot of time. And that's where they look at the next best alternative compared to sharing. But I don't think 100% of the people will move to a personal mobility if they don't have the vehicle.
Thanks, Arvind.
I
I
actually
think
agree with Arvind. I mean, sorry, Vishwas, go ahead.
so.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying that which is very true. I think I touched upon it earlier also, that economic segment exists. And post-COVID, I think COVID has created a financial stress to every organization and every individual. And post-COVID, it's not that people will have more disposable income at their hand. In fact, they would be left with lesser. And with lesser, they will have to optimize. So I think if you talk about the impact, the biggest impact would be that if people can continue working from home, whichever roles, professions they are, which allows that, that would continue for a reasonable time till the fear is around. And post that, only those I would say roles would be called which are necessary with effective social distancing in transport modes also, as well as in offices. So what we see is that over time it will gradually come back to normal, and we'll have to kind of figure out ways to innovate and enable the caution at very affordable prices. So I think that is the real challenge which all mobility players right now have at our hand.
Okay, so we don't see too much of a shift to personal mobility. If any of the remaining panelists could add to that and take on the sustainability question as well. To sustainability for the transport sector, be it in terms of shifting to electric, in terms of shared mobility becoming personal, perspectives on that.
So just wanted to add a point on the question of the more people opting for personal mobility. So one important thing for us to understand is that, like rightly Vishwas said, that everyone can't afford to go to a personal mobility segment, or even they will not think of owning a second-hand vehicle or anything. But what they will opt is for a safer mode of commute, and that we need to relook, and that we all need to discuss, that how we can assure the safety of the vehicle, how we can rightly communicate it to the user and to the government. And if we talk about the second point of sustainability, like on a lighter note, we all have seen, like most of the transport companies believe that we have a dream of making our environment good and the air quality good. And a good point out of this crisis is that a lot of thing has been improved. But obviously, when the new normal will come, obviously it will go down. But the important thing is that we need to keep that fact with us, that environment and the air quality can repair. Okay, so one important point is that, like for Yulu, we are already all electric companies. Obviously, we would be keeping that in our mind. But one important thing that we all can do, that how to keep this fact and how to keep this dream of ours alive, that we can rightly and achieve the cleaner air and the good environment for us.
Thanks, Rajat. Thanks
Yeah.
for taking that question. Cedric or Chan, whoever.
Just to add on it, I think well, it's also an opportunity, right? With say all of the fueling prices playing up and down, creates a challenge and an opportunity to continue with the impact. But for someone like our company, it's part of our core and part of our DNA that we only do what is environmentally friendly. So we would just double down on what we're doing and look at other opportunities and avenues which are there for us to transform as many vehicles as we can into electric in this time. So that's more our approach to it. And yeah, pretty much.
Thank you. And Chan, 1 minute, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just like closing it out. I mean, I agree with everyone, right? Obviously, any sort of surveys that you show, I mean, you see now riders are saying that they will want to move into personal mobility and not short mobility, but that's, again, it's a knee-jerk reaction, right, to the situation right now. And as Rajat rightly said, like all of us, even the government wants cleaner air. So again, personal mobility too much personal mobility is averse to the clean air situation, right? So like should not go back to square one, use this opportunity to come out. Like, so it is on us to be able to provide the mobility at an affordable and economical prices, Vishwas is saying, and kind of add to the sustainability narrative, which has somehow just happened because of the situation. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. I'll just turn it back to Pratik to kind of give us the main takeaways from this discussion and to close out the webinar. Thanks so much, guys.
Sure. Thanks, Chaitanya. I think our panelists had quite a few points during this discussion, and I've tried to summarize them as best as possible. I think the larger impact of the pandemic has had an effect on businesses, on transport businesses, on businesses, other businesses in the city. I think but one thing that a lot is that the lockdown has had a larger effect on riders and drivers of these mobility enterprises that we a lot of the enterprises, like we heard Uber, we heard Shuttle, we heard the rest of them explain how they are actually prioritizing a lot to help their drivers and their riders in figuring out what best they could help, both financially, both in terms of understanding where they could fit in during these essential workers space, and also retraining them through to actually perform a lot of the jobs that were offered during the pandemic. I think another interesting point is to use data, transportation data, to understand what the mobility demand should be, and to also understand how they could work with government and figure out how do a bunch of these enterprises work together and deploy their services in different parts of the city. I think that's an essential way going ahead when we figure out what the future of mobility and transportation in cities post the lockdown would be. I think with that, I would like to thank my panelists for sharing their experience on how they've been supporting mobility in the city through the pandemic, and their thoughts on how transportation and mobility will play a very important role for transitioning into normalcy. Also, I would like to thank the audience who could join us as well as contribute to the discussion today. We look forward to hearing from you on your thoughts on the webinar and on the subject. WRI will also be doing a few in-depth webinars around public transportation systems in the next couple of weeks. Do stay tuned for updates on that. And I think with that, I would like to thank everybody on the call, and I wish everybody a pleasant day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot, Pratik.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
Bye.